Hey guys, good morning. How's everybody doing? Oops, there we go. All right, it's Wednesday. I hope you're having an awesome morning and an awesome week. We're going to talk about some fun stuff today. This week is all about conscious versus unconscious thinking, right? We're getting into some nerdier stuff, getting into how the brain works, how the mind works, our cognition. All right. So, first of all, I hope you're doing well. Do you have your tea or your coffee? I love to think that this is like our time to just kind of sit and chat. The podcasts are not overly, but kind of carefully outlined and planned and organized. But these Facebook Lives are just totally off the cuff and fun. And so I'm hoping that we're just having a little conversation. You've got something hot to drink this morning and that you're tuning in to just take a few moments to, well, hopefully learn something, right? We're going to talk about unconscious and conscious thinking today, which is something that maybe a lot of us don't spend a lot of time paying attention to or considering, but also just taking some time to take care of yourself. That's what a lot of this is about is, coaching, I think, is one of the coolest things out there. It's one of the coolest things going because when we get our mindset cleaned up, when we get our thoughts organized and we get our mind really clean around what we want, who we want to be, how we want to feel, how we want to act in the world, the results, the goals, things that we want to accomplish and achieve, then it's like anything is possible and your whole life just opens up. So I just think coaching is one of the best gifts that we have. And I don't know, it's such a privilege to be here with you and share this stuff with you. So let's get into it. Today, this is episode number 8 of the Transforming Anxiety podcast, which you can find on iTunes, you can find it on Spotify, you can find it on Stitcher. So check that out. If you haven't, it just released this morning. And so we have talked about the model. We have talked about thoughts, we've talked about feelings, and I thought it would be good to talk about conscious and unconscious thinking because at this point in the game, there's a lot of people who are like, okay, totally on board with the concept that my thoughts create all of my feelings drive my actions, and my actions, both short-term and long-term, create the results that I get in my life. People are like, got it, on board with that. But there are things that seem to be happening under the surface. There are things that seem like I'm just hardwired this way, and I can't seem to get in there, right? People say that they can't seem to find the thoughts. They can't seem to find the feelings. Sometimes they don't even really notice their actions. It's not until the very end where they're seeing this huge result. They're seeing something like $50,000 in debt. They're seeing something like 50 pounds overweight. They're seeing things like chronic anxiety, which I put in the R line. I put that as a result. It is a feeling to feel anxious, but something that's chronic that becomes a way of life, I also put that as a result because that's not how you want to be living your life. That's not the result you want to be getting. So the answer to this, or one answer to this, and something I think is very important to pay attention to and to consider, is our conscious versus our unconscious thinking. So let's do just quick, and it seems relatively obvious, but the unconscious part is really important. So let's, the conscious part, let's define these things first, right? The conscious part of your thinking is the part that you're aware of, right? You may describe yourself as a people pleaser, or somebody who's always late, or somebody who has a really strong work ethic. Maybe you describe yourself as a go-getter. Maybe you can say, hey, I'm feeling cold. I'm feeling hungry. I'm feeling anxious, right? These are all things that you are consciously aware of. So that's the conscious part of your cognition. Things that you're learning, things that you're experiencing right now, things that are happening around you right now, those are things you're consciously aware of. So it's the conscious part of your thinking. But there's this other part of our cognition, the unconscious part, which we don't give that much credit to. And the truth is, the conscious part is just like the tip of the iceberg. There's so much that happens under the surface in the unconscious part of our thinking. And the unconscious part is not always, or hardly ever, acting with the authority of the conscious part. Meaning the unconscious part of you is not like checking in with the conscious part to say, hey, what do you think? Are we on the right track? Does this make sense? Does this work for you? Your unconscious part is just on autopilot. It's on this super highway of things that you have. Most of these things are things that you have practiced, that you've gotten really good at, that you've done over and over and over again. So this is good in some ways. Like, you don't have to wake up every morning and learn how to drive your car. You don't have to wake up every morning and learn how to brush your teeth. Those are things that have fallen into the unconscious part of your mind, and you can just do these things automatically. You don't hardly have to think about it, right? You can carry on a conversation, you can be listening to a podcast, you can be doing whatever while you're brushing your teeth or while you're driving a car, and you don't have to consciously pay attention. We could argue whether we should be consciously paying more attention while we're driving, but we'll leave that for now. So what is the difference? How does the unconscious part affect us? So in the podcast, let's see if I can find this really quickly. I don't know if I can. I read this interesting, here we go. Okay, here's the quote. So there's two books that I refer to in the podcast, and there's a quote that I want to read to you from one of them. So this is Dr. John Sarno's book called Healing Back Pain, The Mind-Body Connection. We've got quite the glare there. Anyway, this is not a new book. This is an amazing book. And it, you'll think, okay, well, what does healing back pain have to do with any of this? He works with the unconscious mind a lot to get into the source of and cause of people's physical back pain. So this is a doctor who has helped cure people of physical pain by getting into their unconscious mind. That is the power of this. So something he says, this is kind of in the first part of the book, is it is an interesting fact that the overwhelming majority of emotional and mental activity occurs below the level of consciousness. So that is a key thing to pay attention to. If most of what's happening in our minds is happening below the level of consciousness, it's no wonder that sometimes you are feeling things that you're not really paying attention to, that you're acting in ways that maybe you don't want to be acting and don't seem to make much sense to you. This is where a lot of people kind of start putting this together. They're like, I don't know why I do that. I don't know why I react that way. I don't know why I overreact that way, or why I'm not taking action in a place I want to be taking action. Well, the key to that could be because a lot of the mental and emotional stuff, the thoughts and feelings creating and driving those actions, is actually happening unconsciously. It's happening below the conscious level. And so you're not seeing it until you're taking action in the world. And then you're like, what the heck am I up to? Right? This doesn't seem to be making sense. So another book that I reference in the podcast, which is a fantastic book, and we're going to talk so much more about alcohol down the road, but this is Annie Grace's This Naked Mind. This is her first book. Her new book is out now too. But This Naked Mind, Control Alcohol, this is all about using your conscious and unconscious thinking to undo all of the conditioning and habits and patterns that you have around alcohol. So we've got these two seemingly different books, right? One about healing back pain, one about helping people to quit drinking. And they draw on really similar theories and concepts based on the conscious and unconscious thinking. And when I was thinking about this and researching this podcast episode and rereading, these are two tried and true books in my self-development arsenal. And I was pulling from them over and over again and referencing back to them. And I thought it's interesting that, so we've got healing back pain, we've got quitting drinking, and now we are talking about transforming anxiety using these same concepts. So let's get back to, okay, we've kind of defined the conscious thinking. The unconscious thinking is all the stuff that happens below the conscious level. Now, your unconscious cognition, it doesn't speak the same language as your conscious thinking. So unconscious thinking, your unconscious mind, communicates more in pictures and experiences and imagery and emotions and sensations. So these sentences that are going on in your conscious mind, that's not the best way to communicate directly to your unconscious mind. And if you consider that all of the habits and patterns that you have that are falling from the conscious part of your thinking into the unconscious part of your thinking, those are the habits that you have, right? That you don't have to actively be thinking about. You don't have to actively be thinking about brushing your teeth. It's an unconscious habit now. You just know what to do, right? The same is true for your thought patterns. Things that you've been thinking over and over and over again, you don't have to consciously pay attention to anymore. Those things have fallen into your unconscious cognition, and now they're just on autopilot. They're just on repeat on this like super highway in your mind, and they just run over and over and over again. So you're not consciously aware of a thought pattern, right? These thoughts that happen under the surface, but these are the thoughts that aren't easy to find, that create feelings that you may not even really be consciously aware that you're feeling. It's not until you start digging into the thoughts. And a few episodes ago, we talked about thought downloads and really digging into your thoughts. This starts peeling back those layers and getting into the unconscious. We're starting to ask our minds, hey, what's going on in there? What do I have playing on repeat? What are my habits and patterns? You're starting to figure out what's going on in your unconscious mind when you're doing thought downloads over and over and over again. You're starting to look for patterns. You're starting to look for habits. And then you're starting to identify feelings that are coming up for you based on those unconscious thought patterns, right? These things are just things you keep practicing. So, okay, we've got the conscious part you're actively aware of. We've got the unconscious part, which is stuff that is on autopilot because it's stuff you've gotten really good at, right? So now when you're trying to create change, or when you set a goal and you're trying to accomplish a goal, right? Or if you know that you really want something, and consciously you're very aware of that. You're saying, okay, I know I don't want to feel anxious like this. I'm very aware of the fact that I don't want to feel anxiety this way. Why am I still feeling anxiety, right? So part of that puzzle is getting into the unconscious thought patterns that create the feeling of anxiety over and over and over again. So step one, of course, is always understanding what's going on. Step two is learning how to feel that anxiety, learning how to allow, this is what's happening, right? These are the thought patterns that I'm running. I can allow this feeling to come up. But when you're really looking to create change, you've got to use the conscious part of your mind, right? Your conscious cognition to create change in your unconscious thinking. So this is a practice, and all of this is daily practices, right? We can't eat one salad and one workout and be fit. We can't do one meditation and feel more stillness, right? These are all daily practices. Same with cleaning up our mind. So we start doing these thought downloads, we start digging in, we start figuring out what's going on there, and then consciously you start practicing and living into the intentional model, right, that we talked about. This was a few episodes ago. You start living into the intentional thoughts, feelings, and actions that you want to be taking. You have to practice it consciously. So just like if you were learning a new skill, say you'd never brushed your teeth before, you'd have to consciously practice it. And for a few days, weeks, whatever, that would be a little awkward, a little clumsy. You'd be figuring it out. You'd be using a lot of your brain power, a lot of energy. You'd really have to pay attention every time you went to brush your teeth. Then you start getting more familiar with it. It starts becoming a habit. You're figuring it out. You're getting more comfortable with it. So as you become more comfortable, that conscious part isn't quite so necessary. This is starting to fall into the unconscious part of your cognition, right? It's starting to become a little bit more automatic for you. The same with your thought patterns. So wherever you want to go, whatever change you want to be creating, you have to start consciously practicing it. You consciously start putting these thoughts, feeling these feelings, taking these actions. You start doing all of this consciously. The more that you practice it, the more that you do it consciously, the more familiar you get with it, right? The more familiar you get with it, the sooner this is going to start moving into the unconscious part of your cognition. Now, a trick is, because you're saying, okay, so how long is this going to take, right? And how long, like, how do I know this is working? Well, we're having to backtrack. We're having to use the conscious part of your mind to dig into the unconscious habits and thought patterns that you've developed over the however many months, years, decades. So we're pulling all of that up and we're looking at that and we're saying, okay, this isn't working. I want to create something new. So there's two things happening here. You're starting to undo an unconscious pattern that you've had, and you're starting to create a conscious pattern so that that becomes the practice. That's what you're perfecting so that you can send it into the unconscious part of your mind. So here's why I tell you this. You're going to experience what's called cognitive dissonance when the conscious part of your mind wants something and is working on something that the unconscious part of your mind has been trained to do differently. So if you are having an unconscious pattern and that's been creating anxious thoughts for you, and you've identified that thought pattern, and now you're consciously practicing something new, your unconscious mind is going to say, whoa, I've got this other thing. We've been doing this. We're fine over here. I'm comfortable. I'm familiar. I know exactly what to do. The conscious part of you says, yeah, but that isn't working. The unconscious part says, but I'm good at it. Right? So you're going to have to, this is where this gets a little mind bendy. You're using the tool, your mind, and the two parts of this tool, the conscious and the unconscious, kind of against each other in order to create what you want. So here's why I tell you this. Expect the cognitive dissonance. Expect the unconscious part of your thinking to resist what the conscious part of your thinking is trying to put into play. Just expect that it's going to be tricky. It's going to feel weird in the beginning because unconsciously your whole self is like, no thanks. I've got this figured out. We're doing this thing over here. Consciously, you know better. Consciously, you know you can do better and that you want to do better. But you've got to practice it so that it becomes unconscious, right? So just like any other habit, toothbrushing, driving a car, whatever else it is, right? You've had to practice these things over and over and over again. Now, a lot of, here's what stinks about learning this stuff as an adult. We don't have the beauty of a blank slate to create unconscious patterns. As adults, we have years of conditioning and practicing unconscious stuff that hasn't been working for us that we have to undo as we are consciously creating the new stuff. So that's where you're going to feel this resistance. You're going to bump up against that. But just think about, like, in your mind's eye, use the imagery. Like if you've ever cleaned out your closet or your kitchen or your kids' toys or whatever, you have to get everything out and make a big old mess, right? Everything gets a lot messier. You have to sort through it all before you can clean it up, right? Which is to say, it doesn't feel great the whole way. Things get messier before they get cleaner. Your mind is the same way. Things are going to get a little messier. You're going to feel some resistance. You're going to get all of these thoughts, all of these unconscious thought patterns out. And you're going to look at them and go, oh God, I don't want to do this. Let's just put them back in, turn the lights off, and pretend like that didn't happen. Okay? It's going to get messier before it gets cleaned up. Nothing has gone wrong here. It's okay. If you can stay with that, you are on your way to anything you want to create. This is where most people give up. They get that resistance. They get that feeling of cognitive dissonance, and they're like, yeah, no, This isn't fun. This isn't easy. I'm feeling some resistance. This is hard. This is messy. I'm out. If you can stay with that cognitive dissonance, that resistance, and persevere through that, you will be one of the people who creates change. You will be one of the people who can create whatever you want to create. So just know that it's coming. Don't let it surprise you, okay? And I say that because it's like, if you know the obstacle is coming, expect it and just know that you can work through it. You can do this, all right? So I hope this helps. I hope that that the looking at conscious and unconscious cognition, I hope that sheds some light on what's going on and maybe where some of that cognitive dissonance comes up when you say, well, I really want this. Why isn't it happening, right? Got to dig into the unconscious, look at those habits and patterns, undo what's not working, and start consciously creating what you do want. All right? So check out these books. This Naked Mind, this is by Annie Grace, about how to quit alcohol. It's so good. And this one, Dr. John Sarno, Healing Back Pain, The Mind-Body Connection. So good. All right, you guys, that's it for today. If you would like to work on this with me directly, we're getting into some good stuff now, right? And if you would like to do this with somebody, it's hard to do this without the perspective of an unbiased third party sometimes, which is exactly what the beauty of coaching is. Come on over to my website, kellyhanlonmccormick.com/coaching. You can sign up for a free mini session there, and we can work through this together. You'll be surprised what we can do in 15 minutes or so. And it just helps to work through it with somebody who's outside of it. When you're in your own story and you're in your own unconscious patterns and habits, it's hard to get perspective sometimes. So you can know what's going on, but if you'd like a little help working through this, and I think we all need that, I work with my coaches every week. I've got multiple coaches. It takes a village. So anyway, I hope you're doing awesome. Also, one more thing. There is a cheat sheet. There is a conscious thinking cheat sheet available on my website. So kellyhanlonmccormick.com/podcast/8. I've linked to both of these in the description of the video. So you can come on over, grab your cheat sheet. That will explain a little bit more of what I've talked about here, conscious and unconscious, and it'll just give you a way to keep that handy. You can download it. It's free. No big deal. And then if you'd like to take this a little bit further and really start working on this and just get laser focused and get going, then come on over to the website, kellyhanlonmccormick.com/coaching, and sign up for your free session with me, and let's do it. All right. I hope you guys have an amazing rest of the day, an amazing rest of the week, and I will see you again next Wednesday. Bye for now.